I like to move in what is known as the esoteric, meaning what is less talked about and less known. Which I do partially because, well, I want to feel special for knowing about stuff that almost no one else knows about. But also because I'm just afraid that we'll forget something that is actually important. What if we have lost sight of a classic? And in my quest to find all these things, I have read a lot of garbage. J.K. Rowling isn't getting better! And some good things, I guess. A lot of them don't really stick in my mind. I just think, well, that was bad and leave it. Don't really think about it again. But there's one book specifically that I keep coming back to in my mind because when I think about it and when I talk about it, I have to preface it with, I don't think vegetarians are necessarily evil. That's a very strange statement, but it's very fitting for this book because I know a lot of vegetarians and even vegans, and they're decent people. They're not super weird like some people have it out to be. I think people have like a negative perception of them just because it makes them question their own morality when someone has good reason for not eating meat. And I agree with a lot of their statements. I wish I could be a vegetarian, but every time I go into a kitchen about to cook something more complicated than a microwave meal, the entire house catches on fire just on instinct. So that isn't gonna happen anytime soon, unfortunately. So vegetarians not necessarily being evil is very true. Notice that I say necessarily, because I have read a book that made me seriously question all of that. And that is Quest for the Faradawn by Richard Ford. So what is the Quest for the Faradawn about? Well, it's about a boy who is raised in the woods by a family of badgers after his parents just left him there at Christmas, I guess. I told you this is gonna get weird. And then the elven king of the area gathers him up and tells him that he is the special and he has to gather all the Faradawns, and kind of summarizes the entirety of the Silmarillion very clunkily over 10 pages, which gets super confusing. And then humans invade the forest, forcing him to move out with a tiny band of animal companions and a girl who once fell in love with him for seeing him once in the forest. I told you, this is weird. And yeah, they go on a huge adventure to find all the Faradawns and stop, like, Satan, I guess. And help the good god save the planet from the corruption of the corruption. Yeah. So, to be fair to the book, I'm going to mention some things that I genuinely like about it. One, the female character isn't completely useless, she actually does things. And two, the aim of this book is to make you feel bad for ever having seen a steak in a supermarket. So, when it describes violence towards animals, it is gruesome, it is effective, and it just makes you feel incredibly bad. So if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, don't read this. And yeah, that's kind of it. And now to my problems with this book, everything else. So this is the story of a guy going on a quest to find and gather all the Faradawns for the good god of things, right? So my question is, why does he do absolutely nothing? You'd expect him to, perhaps if he was more of a fantasy hero, to run up and do battle against the mean humans to defend the animals that he is alongside, but he never does. He is always just protected from anyone else. So you might be thinking, oh well, he's got to do some planning at least to get around all of these things. No! People literally just tell him where to go. And even the battle against the big bad isn't so much him doing anything as it is one of his companions just pulling him out there. He actually meets the big bad, and the big bad kind of hypnotizes him to almost do something bad, and then one of his companions comes in and just fucking drags him out, saying, no, you shouldn't be going here. I don't get it. There's no appeal. And the weirder thing is that he is kind of a magical being that can do magic, but he never does magic. He never learns magic. There's even a point when he gets the Faradawn of water or whatever, where the Elven King of the Sea or something goes, oh, you have to earn these Faradawns, and you have to earn all these things, and you know magic, so it has to do with that. But there isn't like any direct magic. It's been a while since I've read it, but I think it just kind of scans our hero with like one of the Faradawns, and he says, yep, you're good, you've earned it, because you're born like this. If I had to describe it in a video game setting, which is really not my style, imagine if you were just told to walk somewhere and there was action around you, but you could never partake in it. And you just had to blindly walk around with people telling you were special while you did nothing special. It's so bizarre. And speaking of bizarre, just the morality of this entire thing is really weird, because what Richard Ford really wants you to bring home from this book is that eating meat is bad. It makes you a bad person, and that it is unnatural. You know what's really funny about that? Basically, all the animal companions he has are carnivorous. You know, he's around an owl and a dog, and like, it's never brought up because that would damage his point. So I just sit there reading it and go, well, this is kind of interesting. He's with an owl. What is going to happen when the owl has to eat? Oh, he just eats berries. I don't think Richard Ford knows how nature works, and yet he wants to make a very clear point that anyone who eats meat are reprehensibly evil. But the weirdest thing is this, and we're getting into spoilers. So if you really don't want to get spoiled for how Quest for the Faradawn ends, I recommend just stopping the video here, but why would you? The only reason that I finished this book was because I was so fascinated with where it was going. This was different from anything else I'd read, and when I finally got there, well, that felt like it. Like, the only thing I wanted to know. So the book ends with our hero finally gathering all the Faradawns and putting it on a shrine in the blanket that he was left in when he was a baby, because that's magical somehow. And this action leads to there being lines that draw people towards bunkers, but only people that don't eat meat and animals, who, as Richard Ford knows, never eat meat. And then, when a little time has passed and everyone has gone down into these abyssal dark cave entrances, the world explodes. It literally just blows up and then gets super glued back together, and my first thought was, wait, was our hero the villain of the entire piece? Just bringing all of these things needed to destroy the world, but then the world gets super glued back together again, and everyone goes out and restarts civilization. This is one of the weirdest resolutions I've ever seen to any book that I've ever read, that just society restarts. But it gets even weirder because it turns out this really happened. And Richard Ford is really occupied in the epilogue of telling you that humanity lost their way after they left the Earth bunker after the Earth exploded and began eating meat again, and thus the world was the same again. But he's convinced this story is a true story because he met a guy in the forest that sporadically told him this story. And what convinced him that this story was real was the part where the Earth exploded. I've read the entirety of the Discworld series, and I think those are hilarious, but they don't hold a fucking candle to Richard Ford desperately trying to convince the audience in the epilogue that all of this really happened. I have never laughed through an entire chapter until that point. So yeah, Quest for the Faradawn. I recommend it because it's so bad that it's good. I really want to see like this weird little book get a resurgence in just an audience who have inside jokes about it. And that is also the reason why I feel that it's so important for me always to explain that even though I like this book on the principle of being so bad, I disagree that all vegans and vegetarians are as weird as all that. Because Quest for the Faradawn, weird moral aside, is a great way of exploring the fact that there's weirdos in basically every community, but that doesn't mean that every community is bad. You'll meet people who are good fans of the Percy Jackson series. You'll meet good fans of the Merlin series. And you'll meet Harry Potter fans that don't like J.K. Rowling. There are good people in every group, even though there are some weird extremists. Except the people on the far right, they're all garbage. Fuck you, goodbye.